Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to High Top Sports Oregon. Sorry, we had a little bit of a miscommunication with the thing that we use, the StreamYard link, but that's okay. We are here. Go ahead. Link is in the description. It's in the comments. Go ahead, click that link. Call in if you would like, and we're going to talk a little bit of Oregon Ducks football, Vandals. But first, we are powered by BetUS, our sponsor. Love to have them here. They pay the bills for us, and they allow Derek to buy all those jerseys. I got some shoes this week, so didn't help my case with the Florida Gators. We got ran down by Miami, but that's besides the point. Let's go ahead and get right into some around the duck pond and get some duck content going. So the Vandals showed up to Eugene and
hmm
kept everything in front of them defensively, and it was it was a little bit of a dogfight, which we were expecting week one, right, Derek?
hmm Yeah, that's true. I think what makes it really kind of hard to digest is the fact that you are playing an FCS team, as a top three team in the country in your home environment, and just kind of with that and all the media hype and such that's kind of surrounded this team so far, you really want to be able to translate to that you're on the field play. And I think kind of everything but that happened for the Ducks today. I mean, there was a lot of good stuff that happened for them, obviously, and we'll get into specifics here in a little bit, but there was also a lot that went wrong, and it was a lot of self-inflicted wounds today. But I'm not going to take away from Idaho's credit. I'll give them their flowers. They played very, very well. Idaho's defense showed up. They maintained constant pressure on Oregon's offensive line, which was Achilles' heel for them tonight. And their offense was able to move the ball a little bit in crunch time in the second half there. So, yeah, shout out to Idaho. They have a very good team. I think they're ranked number 7 in the FCS level currently, and I have a feeling their ranking will shoot up here a little bit after their performance in Eugene. But, yeah, I'm happy to be 1-0, but that's about where the happiness ends for me tonight, Prof.
Okay, well, at least you didn't get beat, and it was not as bad as Colorado, North Dakota State the other night. I'm gonna say this: the Vandals played the defense extremely well. They kept everything in front of them, but there was some bright spots. That running back of yours, my goodness, when he can get a hole, he is electric. That linebacker, elite speed. I mean, that guy's got speed for days. There are some bright spots. DBs at times look good. Savage came down with a big time hit out of the safety position. Not all doom and gloom. Dylan Gabriel looked good, looked efficient. Put some yards up, made some first downs, made some things happen. But it was just not collectively. The O line and everything wasn't in sync. I think we could say that, right?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Is that nothing about this night felt in sync for Oregon? It just felt like they were never able to put all three phases of the game together at one time to kind of maintain a certain flow within the game itself. It kind of felt like everything was disjointed, especially coming from the offensive line. I think they had, 5 penalties between them tonight, and 4 out of the 5 members of that offensive line did have a penalty. So, I mean, obviously those are the type of things you want to clean up. It doesn't help that a lot of these holding penalties or these illegal formation penalties kind of come in third down situations, or all of a sudden, instead of looking at a third and short, you're looking at a third and medium to a third and long. So it's really tough to, continue to be successful when you're shooting yourself in the foot like that. But it is what it is. It doesn't help that, one thing that we've talked about all week was the fact that there was going to be some movement on this offensive line in terms of Matthew Bedford being out. That forced us to take our starting center Poncho and move him over to right guard. And then Charlie Pickard was, he was placed in the center role. And, there's really no excuse per se for how they played tonight, but just understand that there's, the offensive line is only going to get better as it continues to get healthy. Dave Luley, he was missing tonight as well, who figures to be a factor in this offensive line. Obviously, Matthew Bedford, he did dress tonight, so that's an encouraging sign as we move forward, but wasn't able to play. As he returns, he has a ton of starting experience within the Big Ten itself, so that'll be helpful to get him back. And then I just trust Alik Terry as an offensive line coach to kind of rally the troops and, make sure they get back to the standard that Dan wants to put out with his team.
For sure, for sure. I'm gonna say this, guys. This show doesn't work if you guys don't call in. Link is up there in the comments. David, Combat Medic, and Michael, go ahead, call in. If you don't want to show your face, you don't have to. There's a camera option. But this show is a call-in show. It works off of you. We feed off of you guys, and so it's one of those things where we have to have you to call in to keep this thing going. How do you feel about, Tez Johnson had a heck of a night, right? How are you feeling about the weapons of Oregon on the offensive side of the ball? Obviously, the running back is very, very special. If the offensive line can start gelling, get some holes open for him, he could have, 150, 200-yard type of game.
Yeah, I mean, first off, Jordan James, extremely special back. We are fortunate enough to know that we had a solid replacement once, Bucky Irving went to the NFL. So to bring him in, I believe he rushed for over 5 yards a carry last year in an Oregon uniform, and now he gets the opportunity to have the starting reins tonight. And, with the offensive line kind of performing the way they did tonight, not necessarily to the standard that we like to see, I would say he still had a successful night. Obviously, he was able to find the end zone at a certain point, and he was able to rip off a couple, chunk plays. It was just the explosive play factor wasn't necessarily there like we would like to see. But Jordan James had a phenomenal night. As you alluded to, Tez Johnson had a phenomenal night again, which is something we expect to see all year long. I think he's going to kind of be the staple of this Oregon offense in terms of the pass game. As you can see, once Dillon Gabriel gets under a little bit of pressure, his first look is to find Tez. And it's been, noted all throughout camp that they've had a really solid chemistry. And I think that's kind of, that was made apparent tonight. And I do know, just reading about the social media comments and such, people are a little bit disappointed that they weren't able to see Evan Stewart, stretch the field a little bit, get the ball in his hands, or see Trayshawn Holden kind of open up, or Jurion Dickey, who is someone a lot of people expected to see tonight. But I think what had happened is this game started out being called very vanilla in the beginning, which you expect to see with a lot of Power 5 programs when they play these quote unquote cupcake games, right? Like you rarely see a team open up right away and open the playbook up instantly to, play a team at the FCS level. It just doesn't necessarily happen.
Unless you're Lane Kiffin.
Unless you're and Lane, kudos to them, because that was entertaining. If this was high top Ole Miss, the vibe would be a whole different tonight. Good for Lane, but unfortunately that was not the case for us. And I think what had happened is we kind of fallen into that rut of the vanilla play calling, and Idaho, and they played sound. Between Oregon shooting themselves in the foot with the offensive line and Idaho playing sound defense for what they had. It forced Oregon to put themselves in a situation where they needed to do a little bit more, and it just didn't look like they were willing to expand the playbook. I don't think it helped that Dillon Gabriel didn't have time in the pocket to let those receivers try to stretch the field. But it's just one of those that you can't really read too much into it, right? Regardless of what happened tonight. If this is an 81-0 game where Oregon beats Idaho, I'm going to be sitting up here and I'm going to tell you the same thing. Although the mood's going to be very different, there's only so much you can take from that performance. And although, tonight I can see why there's plenty of room for concern in Duck Nation heads, I'm not necessarily, super concerned. Obviously, the offensive line is something I would like to see be improved, and I think it will. But it's not all doom and gloom in Duck Nation. A win's a win, and at the end of the day, we're 1-0 today heading into Boise State. I should say Boise State coming to Eugene next weekend. Should be a good game there. But they definitely need to tune themselves up if they want to step up to the level of competition of Boise State compared to Idaho.
For sure, for sure. We have our first caller of the first ever High Top Sports Oregon show. So you know what, Michael, are you there? Can you hear us?
I'm here.
All right, bud. Well, I'm going to tell you this. Mike, go ahead and get with me after the show. Shoot me an email. I will send you the email to send it to. I'm going to send you a little duck swag because you are the first ever caller for the High Top Sports Oregon show. What do you think tonight? What are you thinking? How are you feeling?
I have a lot of concerns about the team. I thought the defense played fairly well, but it was more about the offense and the line, especially the right side of the line. too many penalties, inability to run the ball, short yardage situations were horrible. Given Gabriel time to pass, there was question marks on that one. So yeah, I have concerns about where the team's going to go from here. I know that we have a fairly good schedule, but yeah, that wasn't what I was expecting for the first game, especially against a team like Idaho. Now, I'll give Idaho credit, but for all the hype that's been around the team and for what they returned, they moved the ball really well. They put up good yards, but they didn't have much to show for it.
Yeah, for sure. I think Idaho did a very good job keeping the offense ahead of them. I think they knew what they were getting into. I think that they let the running back do what he was going to do, but they contained a lot of the stuff in front of them. It didn't let you get away with the big passes over the top. And of course, the playmakers did still make plays. I am concerned a little bit about that offensive line. If they can get that thing to mesh, though, boy, oh boy, look out, because that offense could be absolutely potent. Defensively, I think it's a week one defense, Michael. I think it's there's some missed tackles that you got to clean up a little bit, but that's college football. We saw it all week 0 with Florida State and Georgia Tech. We saw it all day long, minus Georgia Clemson. That was a blowout, but a lot of tight games, even with power programs going against lesser opponents. Would you agree?
Well, I do watch a lot of football, and I know that there was some tight games out there. But once again, for the talent that the team had, there was just things that the front seven I thought did really well. They held them to I thought that Idaho couldn't rush or move the ball very well that way, but there was some issues in the secondary, some blown calls or blown plays, like on that little flea flicker or whatever you want to call that. That was a blown assignment there. There was a penalty over on the left. There may have been a second penalty that they didn't call where he got the pick. But there's the DBs aren't turning around to see where the ball is coming from. So honestly, it just for how much experience they have on the team, there was a lot of times where it's like, well, Idaho's playing with you. The talent isn't showing through. It did at some positions, but once again, it's the inability to run the ball against Idaho. That's not going to put. If you can't do it against Idaho, what are you going to do against Michigan? What are you going to do against Ohio? Everybody was talking about this team making the playoffs. I'm not sure that this team is more than an 8-4 team at best. If they play like this, a decent team's gonna play with them. Even Wisconsin, which I wasn't impressed with, last night. I'm pretty shocked with the how they performed in this game.
I will say this, Mike, real fast. So these teams, this is their Super Bowl, so they are throwing the kitchen sink, and I guarantee Oregon hasn't opened up the full playbook yet. They haven't shown all the weapons, and they maybe some kids that are nursing some injuries. They may have sat out. I don't know exactly the depth chart of who sat out and who didn't, but I'm going to say this: I think when you get into Big Ten play, I think you're going to be okay. Wisconsin was a very, very a good defensive team, and we saw Western Michigan run all over them, and that's not prototypical, but I think that's just kind of the week one jitters and getting it out. I think they're going to clean it up. I hope so. I will say this: I appreciate you calling in. Go ahead and find me on Twitter. Do you have Twitter, Mike?
I don't do Twitter. I'm sorry. Okay.
So go ahead and I'll post my email into the link or into the comments, and you can get at me, and I'll get you some free swag for being the first ever High Top Sports Oregon channel caller. I appreciate you. Any last words before we get you out of here?
Thank you for having me on. I love your guys' shows. Thank you. I follow you guys a lot.
All right. I appreciate you, Mike.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand what he's saying within the concern. I think a lot of what it boils down to is the expectation that comes along with the talent that we're bringing in. Like the secondary is a solid example. You bring in a two-time all-second team Big 12 safety and Kobe Savage and Jabbar Muhammad. Obviously, we were see what he was able to do last year and help lead that Husky defense to a national championship. And you just expect these pieces to kind of come in and play to their potential right away. And when it doesn't happen, it's most definitely alarming. It's frustrating, and even more so when you play against Idaho. Like I said, there's truly no excuse for what happened today. I think a lot of what happened, though, is that it starts with that offensive line. In terms of the offense, I think that's where the biggest concerns are for most people. Excuse me. And I think it's, it starts with obviously Matthew Bedford going down, and then you're sliding Poncho. So you're in a sense, you're losing your starting center, you're losing your starting right guard, and you're replacing with Charlie Pickard, who, they've had great things to say about him all throughout spring and fall camp, which is great. But at the same time, there's a certain dynamic, a certain chemistry that takes place within that offensive line. And now you're disrupting it game one. And I think that was kind of made apparent today. We saw guys who have high draft grades like a Johnny Cornelius and Josh Connerly. They both had committed penalties today. There was some missed blocks by the offensive line. They were constantly getting pushed back in the pass rush. In terms of the run game, they couldn't open up a hole. It was rough for the offensive line, and I'm not going to say it wasn't. But in terms of, hitting the panic button, absolutely not. I think there's a lot that's going to have to come together to make this offensive line group gel. And like I said, it's encouraging to know that Matthew Bedford was dressed tonight and was able to play if absolutely needed be. Fortunately, that wasn't the case, but he's going to return, and I do expect that line to continue to gel. So, everybody just keep in mind that they are up for the Joel Moore Award. They are on the watch list for a reason. People expect this line to be great, and obviously we saw that wasn't the case tonight. But, it's football, man, any given Saturday, and I think that's what we all love about college football.
Yeah, for sure. OU Duck fan. Yeah, my Florida Gators got annihilated. Yes, I know. At home. You're lucky I'm even here, because I may have had one too many of these, and we had not even made this. So you should be a little bit thankful that I, just got, I gutted through this thing. So guys, go ahead, call in. That's what makes this show go. Kyle Tucker will read off some comments while we run through here. Let's go through this. P Piles, I feel like shit. Yeah, I feel you, bud. It'd be one thing if it was against another D1 school, but against a FCS school, come on. I completely discouraged after all the hype. Listen, you drink the Kool-Aid, you get them little nuggets from the Oregon media team. It makes you feel like you're invincible. I get it. 8-4 if we're lucky. How do you feel about that comment there, Derek? 8-4 if we're lucky.
Personally, I don't agree with it. Maybe call it optimism, maybe call it sipping my own Kool-Aid. Call it what it is. I truly believe this team will continue to get better. I don't think the showing that we got in week 1 against Idaho is the identity of this team. I think, the team that we saw tonight and the team that we're going to see hopefully October 12th when Ohio State comes to town, or, later in the year, I think these two are two very different teams. So 8-4, I don't think that's necessarily the case. That would mean Oregon would have to lose damn near every game that's even supposed to be slightly close. But once again, I understand where some of the pessimism is coming from, so I really can't sit up here and, shit on the comment, because at the same time, like, we all saw what was put out on the field and there's no excuse for it. So everybody's got their own opinion. Someone's going to be right at the end of the year. I hope it's me, but, I definitely understand where the concern's coming from. It makes sense to me.
Let's go ahead and go to Kyle Tucker's comment. Ain't time to hit the panic button yet. All of our issues had to do with the O-line, and that can be fixed. O-lines do get better after the year goes on. They seem to gel better. It takes a little bit the time to get them going. What do you think about that?
100%. And that's basically echoing something that we've said 3 or 4 times already on this. There's just not a cohesiveness on that offensive line to this point yet, especially when this Matthew Bedford injury had just happened within the last week. And then all of a sudden, Poncho's starting to get some serious work with the ones at right guard. And then Charlie Pickard, is being thrust into a starting role. And there's just not a true cohesiveness that takes place there. And even say Matthew Bedford was out for an extended period of time, even with the group we have tonight will continue to gel and mold into hopefully a formidable offensive line, if not a dominant one someday. So I think they will gel. Yeah, I think it's coming. It's just, unfortunately, these are the growing pains of the transfer portal era when you don't have dudes have played together for, 2 and 3 years. All of a sudden we're bringing in guys who, they just took their first snaps together in spring camp this year.
For sure. P-Piles, you guys are making excuses for a terrible play. I have never seen Oregon play so bad with players we have. Idaho has 0-star players, and they outplayed our 4 and 5 stars players. I blame Dan. Don't get hooked on the stars. Stars are a delusion. A team is a team, and if you don't have a team, then you just have stars out on the field. It doesn't really matter. Truthfully. You can have a great team show up with 5 stars all around. We've seen Alabama get beat by teams. We've seen Georgia get beat by teams. That the stars don't matter. Take the stars out of it. Let's go ahead and move on. I think that's the worst we'll look all year, and they'll use it fuel to go forward. Kyle Tucker, a little optimism in the DucksCall.
Boy, Kyle.
Love to see it. What do you think
Kyle
about that
is
comment?
Spitting. Yeah, Kyle's spitting, man. Kyle knows what's up. This is the worst they look all year. Unfortunately, like I said, I don't know where it was. I saw it in the comments a little earlier. It just sucks that it happens to happen against Idaho. I completely understand it. Like I've said multiple times, I don't think there's an excuse for it. There's truly not, whether you want to call it not having cohesion, whether you want to call it jitters, whatever you want to call it, don't call it an excuse because there shouldn't be one. So I understand that, but I also agree with Kyle's statement here. I do think this is the worst they've looked all year. That, to be real honest, they only are going to continue to gel and bond and mold together as the year moves forward. But I don't know. It's, it is always a little dicey when you start out your year a little shaky. It doesn't help when our sample size is 1 game. So there's nothing else to compare it against, but yeah, you know how it goes.
I gotcha. All right. So up to go. If we can't run, we can't throw. The O-line played a goose egg, and we should be taken out of the top 10. How do you feel about that?
I mean, fair. I don't think we can't throw. I don't think that's necessarily a fair statement just based off of what Dylan Gabriel did. I think it would be fair to say we couldn't throw deep or even medium tonight. I think that would be a completely fair statement just because that offensive line was atrocious. The Prof and I were talking about before we jumped in the show that, DG didn't have any time. This man couldn't drop back. He couldn't get into a 5-step drop if he wanted to.
I feel you.
And another comment. Yeah. Another comment that I was seeing is they're like, Dylan Gabriel needs to use his legs a little bit more, which I kind of understand where they're coming from. But at the same time, when you're having the pocket collapse from not one soft area, you're having the whole pocket collapse. It's not necessarily just as easy as, sprinting around the defensive line. So it's tough. It is a tough when your offensive line is the piece that is, hindering you. And unfortunately, that's the reality that we're at right now.
Okay. All right. Well, we're at the part of the show where we have to do what we have to do, which is pay the bills. So let's go ahead. Let's check it out. The line. This is powered by BetUS. This show. Go ahead, use the link in the description. Get 125% off your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. That's the first 3 deposits up to $2,000, 125% back. You can mess up like I did and totally jack your parlay by going with your home team in the points like Florida or taking Wisconsin with the points or North Dakota State. I'm not looking very good this week, but that's okay because I have that insurance of going back. I have 125% back with BetUS on my first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Let's go ahead and get into LSU USC. What are you taking, Derek?
I don't think Duck fans are going to like me for saying it. So I think you know where this one's going. I'm a little bit higher on USC than a lot of Duck fans are. So me personally, I'm taking the USC points. Give me that field goal and some change. I'll take that +4. The line that I'm looking at that looks real enticing to me, though, is that over 64.5. Last year, neither of these teams even knew what a defense was. So, now we're running these teams against each other and we're saying, good luck, go figure it out. Now, I understand LSU, they lost a Heisman Trophy winner and a pair of, extreme talent NFL wide receivers, but they're one of those teams that's just a constant cycle. They reload constantly. So I think it's going to be a high-powered game, but personally, I'm going to take the USC points at +4.
What are you feeling about Boston College, Florida State?
If the money line wasn't -800, that -17 after the showing that they put out there is it's daunting, man. It is so tough to look at that number and feel any sort of confidence in Florida State whatsoever. Jesus. What my gut's telling me, though, once again,
I'm taking the under. I'm pounding the under.
The under, that under 50 mark, huh?
Yeah, I feel like Boston College is going to show up and they're going to score like 14, 21 points. I think Florida State's going to score like maybe 14 points after I think Boston College is really going to no, really, for real. I'm not just because I'm a Florida guy, I'm not being a hater. I think it's going to be very close. I think it's going to be low scoring, and I think it's going to be under 50. I would pound the under.
See, when I take an under, you kind of get that gut feeling. I love the points, the positive points. And then especially we're talking about a +17. We're talking, 3 possessions here. It's tough, man. And how do you look at Florida State's performance last week and you say, yeah, I'm confident they can go out and win by 17. Now it's like, should they win by 17? Absolutely not what I'm saying. Will they win by 17? That's a whole different ballgame.
For sure. That is powered by BetUS, and if we are wrong, guess what? It doesn't matter. You know why? Because you can see I have 0 cash, but I have all that FP right there. That FP was my betting insurance. It kicked in, and I really butchered this last one, but that's okay. It's week 1. We're still trying to get dialed in, just like Oregon's trying to get their O-line dialed in and all the other teams out there. For real.
I feel you, Prof. I took an L on my parlay today. Virginia Tech, they kind of screwed me over this morning. That was a tough way to start my day.
You just when you dial them things in, you feel so fucking confident about it. You're like, man. Are they giving me this? Like, are they trying to lose money? And then you do it, and then it happens, and you're like, oh yeah, Vegas is never unbeat.
Oh yeah, that's the thing too, man. A lot of times when you see those lines in Vegas and you're like, man, that's too good to be true. It is. I'm thinking 100% too good to be true.
I think in the 4.5 may be a wild ride for Florida. I don't know after today. I'm like,
my boy, I know we're on an Oregon channel right now, but I do want to say condolences to the rest of the High Top fam. And in case the Oregon fans are watching right now don't know, the rest of the High Top network outside of myself they're pretty Florida heavy. And if you didn't see it today, the Gators, their lifeless body might still be laying out on the field today. So
Miami came in and gave them all the smoke and then some. But you know what? That's what happens. That's what happens when you don't produce. And
that's football, man.
That's football. Any given Saturday, anybody can beat you. We almost saw Western Michigan beat Wisconsin last night. So it's one of them things. You got to show up every single weekend. Cam Ward winning the Heisman? Oh, I don't know about that. I think it's just a bad defense, to tell you the truth. Boston College is winning one. Let's see. Let's go. There's some comments up here I want to get to. For crying out loud, only one game. They haven't even gelled yet together. How we feeling?
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. I mirror that comment exactly. It is one game. It sucks. It was a shit game. I didn't enjoy it. Straight up, did not have a good time. It's even like when you see the clock strike 0 and you see your little record go to 1-0. It was like one of those things where I was like a little more pissed off than anything still. I'm like, this is the product we put on the field. You know, a lot of us fans, we really, really look forward to college football. And odds are, if you're watching our show right now, you're one of those fans. So then, you know, to come in here and you get a cupcake handed to you like Idaho, and you know you get told by the media you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then you go out and you crap the bed. It's a pretty deflating feeling. So truly, it's one of these things where like I expect the team to get better, but like for the people who are, you know, feeling a little extra pessimistic today, I can't dispute their comments, man. It was a rough showing today, but. You know, like I said, I know what I think is going to happen, but
yeah,
who knows?
And it can always be worse. You could be a Florida fan and lose to Miami, an in-state rival, and with a bunch of recruits there, and all the recruits saying we just need to see Florida win, and we would go to you guys, and then you go ahead and lay that egg of what we did today. Boy, oh boy, it is tough.
Well, you know. I know of Florida fans. I got a couple of DMs. They were really happy that 5-star Dallas Wilson was on campus for Florida this weekend, and I all of a sudden think it turned into much more of a Miami recruiting trip than anything. So yeah, thanks for that, Prof. I really appreciate Billy going out there and like giving Mario a friggin' layup like he needs any help in the recruiting world.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Yeah, tough. Let's go ahead and work through these comments, and then we are going to close it down right before the hour mark, and we'll get through here. Agreed, Scuba Squad leader. I never felt we'd lose, just kind of annoyed at how bad it looked. Doesn't look that bad when they're shooting those little teasers, does it?
When we're busy winning off-season national championships and watching, you know, that team out west every Tuesday at 5:00, we're looking like national champions, and then all of a sudden we get a dose of reality thanks to the Vandals out there.
The biker gang.
Yeah, the biker gang, the Vandals, or the Deadly Disease. I'm not sure what they're named after at this point, but yeah, that's something I had said earlier. It was an annoying game to watch. It was never, I shouldn't say never, for 98% of the game. In my head, I'm like, yeah, we're not losing this game, but it still sucks to watch. It's a crap performance. And yeah, I think Kyle and I are sharing some very similar feelings about the game today.
For sure. Kyle Tucker. The few times he had a clean pocket, he carved them up. How we feel about that?
And that's fair. I think that is reflected directly in the scorebook or in the stat log. You were able to see what Dylan Gabriel was able to do. You're able to go see efficiency stats, and he was extremely efficient tonight with the ball. Kept the ball out of harm's way for the most part. He did have one errant throw and a ball that realistically should have been intercepted. So definitely don't want to see that. But overall, he had a very solid night, especially given the offensive line performance in front of him. I mean, when you're constantly under duress in your first game in a new system with players you've never played with before, in a game speaking, it puts a lot of pressure on you. And I thought, considering the circumstances Dylan was dealing with tonight, I thought he played extremely well.
For sure. And then Michael George, our boy Michael, said the defensive front looked great. The young guys like Mateo showed out.
Yeah, Mateo had 2 sacks tonight. I think one of them was a strip sack that Idaho ended up pouncing back on. But Mateo in himself had a great performance. I know if any of you guys were able to tune into the High Top show last Saturday, we were all picking our breakout players for our team this year, and Mateo was mine. For this particular year, I think this is going to be one where he takes that step to the next level and really, hones in on that 5-star, ability that he was toted with. So excited for him to show up. And then, it was just kind of the depth of the defensive line It seemed like there was a ton of pressure there. Jordan Birch obviously played extremely well. Derek Harmon, the transfer from Michigan State, played extremely well. Jamari Caldwell was, he was constantly in the backfield, the transfer from Houston. So there was a lot of guys who were up there making a name for themselves. And Amari Washington played really well for himself too. So it's nice to see one of the guys who started with the Ducks in their program last year come through and crack, some serious playing time.
I will say that who is that linebacker that they kept bringing up?
Jeffrey Baza.
Or
are you talking about the really, when you were like, oh, they have the really fast one?
Yeah.
Devin Jackson.
That kid is fast.
Yeah, he's got a high motor too. Technically, and looking at his fundamentally, I should say, it's I think there are some areas he could improve in, but man, that speed and the way he flies around there, man, he is an absolute weapon.
Yeah. That kid's
in that
hitter.
linebacking course.
If they can get him squared up and making open field tackles and stuff like that, and reading the play better, boy, oh boy, golly. I mean, he is you just see him just streak. He's just streaks across the I mean, I saw him at one run and play. The running back tried to bounce him outside, and he ran him out of bounds for no. The running back had the edge on him, and he ran him out of bounds for no gain.
Yeah, I actually know the exact play you're talking about, where it looked like the running back was going to turn the corner, and it was a solid, it wasn't nothing crazy. It was going to be like a 5-6 yard gain, and all of a sudden you're looking and you're like, dude, there was nothing there. But that straight line speed goes crazy. I think his kind of Achilles heel is, I think a lot of times his feet move faster than his head. So he's going in to just lay the wood, but obviously, these guys, they're shifty, they're quick on their feet, and they're not going to let that happen. And I think, that twitchiness that they present, he gets a little ahead of himself sometimes. I do think, though, that's one that I know Dan's talked about. This is year 2 now where they've talked about how excited they are for him, and they think this year he's taken that step into, being able to be in that upper tier of linebacker. So I'm excited to see what he can do this year. He's not necessarily a starter, but he's someone we're going to see very frequently on this defense. Boy,
oh boy, if he can just get squared up and make the open field tackles and reading plays is so hard. I'll even break it down for you real quick before we get out of here. Pop Warner, like my son, he plays the edge position, and they had a kid out today, so he had to play outside linebacker, and he was not as effective at outside linebacker as he is at edge, because it's a lot more reading. It's, at edge, he sees ball, get ball. He sheds the block and goes after the quarterback. At linebacker, you're reading everything and then making your steps. It's a tougher position to play. He's got the straight line speed. He's got the pass rushing moves. He doesn't have the lateral speed as what some of these kids do at his age right now. So, but boy, you see a linebacker like him, and you're like, oh my goodness, this kid could be a freak.
Oh yeah,
he's like 215, 225, and he's
solid. He's built too. Yeah, built. I mean, he's a thick dude that can just get chugging. But actually, yeah, this just made me think too when we were talking about difficult positions to play. One thing that I didn't bring up quite yet that I would like to before we jump out of here is to give the flowers to the nickel players tonight for Oregon between Brandon Johnson and Nico Reed. Brandon Johnson obviously had the interception in the end zone and he had a TFL tonight. Nico Reed had an interception tonight, was constantly in on plays. We saw Brandon Johnson crash the box multiple times and be effective in the run game. Nico was flying all over the backfield and, being able to pick up different assignments there. So I thought those two guys played extremely well. And to be real honest, though, that was a position for me that I was a little bit concerned about just because I didn't know if Nico was ready to take that next step. And then Brandon Johnson had a very successful year at Duke, but then, you're kind of plugging him into an entirely different defense schematically, asking him to do different things. But both of those men were absolutely phenomenal tonight. So I think that's a really, really encouraging thing for the Ducks defense to know that you have not one, but two nickels who can be effective at this level.
And I'll say this, Savage in the box was pretty good too, flying around and making some tackles at that safety position, that in box safety position type.
I don't know. I don't even know what they truly call. Yeah, I don't know what Oregon truly labels it. Yeah, it's a big nickel. Call it a field safety, call it a short safety. I don't know what you call it. Dude, it was. I think the first quarter was a little frustrating because for me personally, that's someone who I'm really, really looking forward to. I think that kid could be an absolute force in this defense, and I think he's going to have to be if Oregon's going to be successful in the long run. But he did mess up a few times in that first quarter. There was a blown assignment that led to a 20-yard play, and he had a missed tackle in the run game early on. But yeah, he picked it up, and you were kind of able to see the versatility that he brings tonight because he was playing. He could slide into that deep safety. He can play a little bit of true nickel position. He can play whatever hybrid position he plays in that, I'll call it a field safety, short safety. I played really well. So a lot of these transfers tonight on the defensive side of the ball in particular, I thought played really well. Jabbar Muhammad, I know I saw a comment earlier how they're like, I didn't hear anything about Jabbar Muhammad tonight. He must not have played well.
That's good.
I'm like, well, that was going to be my exact point right there. And it's like in the secondary, that's one of those things though. Like if you don't hear your name called, especially if you're that primary cornerback, like you had a phenomenal night. So Jabbar did what Jabbar is supposed to do. I was very happy with it.
Yeah, for sure. I got a thing for cornerbacks. I watched a bunch of film when I was watching about Devin Witherspoon, and you never. I mean, you go a whole game and like you'd see one play, and you're like, oh yeah, that guy's locked down because they threw him through on his side on desperation, and he knocked it down or picked it up or what have you. It's like that guy's it. It's when you start hearing those secondary players over when you know their names, it's not good as a cornerback.
Yeah, 100%. When it's when you hear the announcers in particular say these guys' names, it's very, very rarely a good thing because that means the offense knows, unfortunately, you're the spot they want to attack. You're the weak point. And they didn't see that with Jabbar tonight. I think Idaho did a really good job moving around their weapon. Excuse me if there happens to be any Idaho fans watching it. Can't remember number 6's name, but they did a really good job moving him around and utilizing him. But unfortunately, when he was locked up against Jabbar, it wasn't much of a matchup.
All right. Great show, guys. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Appreciate it. The call-in show works around you guys. We'll run through comments like always, but the call-in show works through you. If you guys want to see a little sample size, you can go watch the 2-hour one of Gator Nation melting down that we had earlier. But that's what we want to get it to eventually. We had 1,100 strong up in that show, and that's what we want to get to here. We know the Oregon fans are there. We just haven't reached to them for the live call-in show yet. And I think we're one of the only ones doing it. So go ahead, share it out, tell everybody. And I want to thank our great sponsors. This video is powered by BetUS. I'm Cody the Professor. We got Derek the Duck, and we're going to close it out. Probably watch a little Washington before we go to bed. I think you're glimpsing up on it right now.
Yeah, I am.
We will see you guys later.